House Chairperson, yesterday, South Africa's future was put at stake.
Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members.
Shortly before the Cabinet meeting yesterday, the President informed me that he intended to remove Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield as a Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. I requested 24 hours to speak to Whitfield and to inform my party. However, before I could do so, just 3 hours later, Whitfield received a letter informing him of his removal. The apparent reason for this sudden and ill-considered decision is that Whitfield did not obtain permission to travel abroad earlier this year.
Honourable Minister Steenhuisen, will you take your seat, please? There's a point of order. Order, honourable members. Honourable members.
Chair, I rise on Rule 68. The last time I checked, we were debating the
Order.
Division of Revenue Bill. The Speaker, with respect, is irrelevant to the topic of today. Thank you.
Yes. Honourable Steenhuisen, Minister Steenhuisen, will you get back to the topic under discussion, please?
House Chair,
Order.
I'm setting out the reason why we will be voting, how we will be voting in the House today on this bill.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members. Honourable members, let's listen. Honourable members over there, can you please quiet down now? Order. Honourable members, order. May I request the Chief Whip of the Economic Freedom Fighters just to ask the members to calm down. You don't even know the reason yet. So let's listen to the debate, honourable members. Chief Whip of the EFF, can you calm down your members, please? Thank you. Thank you. Please proceed, Honourable Steenhuisen.
But the facts in this matter contradict this flimsy reasoning. In fact, on the 12th of February, Deputy Minister Whitfield had written to the President requesting permission to travel. 10 days later, he had not received a reply or any response whatsoever about the trip. Whitfield subsequently wrote...
Order, honourable members. May I ask the Chief Whip of the ANC to do the same, please? Otherwise, we are not going to get through the speech. Let's be fair, honourable members, let's be fair. Even if you disagree with what the honourable member is saying, the honourable member, in terms of the rights and the Constitution, have the right to say what he wants to say. Order. Please proceed.
Whitfield subsequently wrote to the President to apologize if he had caused offence. Again, he received no response. Then yesterday, months after the incident, and without a further word on it, the President unilaterally removed a DA Deputy Minister without even giving his largest coalition partner an opportunity to discuss it with the member or his party.
Order, honourable members.
Now, according to the President's spokesperson, this move is not part of a broader reshuffle. And there can therefore be no other conclusion to be drawn that this is a calculated assault on the second largest party in the governing coalition. But
Order, honourable members.
What makes matters worse is that this unilateral action is a result and a product of a flagrant double standard. While a DA Deputy Minister is removed for not getting a response to seeking permission to travel, there are members in the Cabinet who are implicated in the VBS scandal and looting. There are members in the cabinet. There are members in the
Order,
cabinet
honourable members.
who, despite apparently misleading Parliament over an attempt to deploy corrupt cadres to CETA boards, remains in the cabinet. Serial underperformers and people implicated in state capture continue to sit around the cabinet table. Now, instead of being summarily fired, like DM Whitfield was, these ministers get an opportunity to submit a report to the President on their behaviour. In the past, even ministers who had serious public protector findings against them were merely admonished or had their pay docked. Yet a DA deputy minister is dismissed with the flimsiest of excuses. Are the people of South Africa expected to accept that fraudsters, corruption accused and Zondo accused are protected while Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield is removed? But perhaps there's something even deeper at play here. Like all DA ministers and deputy ministers, contrary to what the Honourable Tambo said, Andrew Whitfield was succeeding in his job. He had opposed the attempt to make suspect appointments to the IDC board. He was raising uncomfortable questions about the Transformation Fund and the opportunities it provides for looting. And yes, he was asking the uncomfortable questions about the Lotto Tender Award. Now, given this flagrant double standard, one is left with no choice but to conclude that hard-working DA members of the executive are fired for fighting corruption, not for committing corruption. For being good at their jobs rather than incompetent. Now, if this situation is not corrected, it will go down as the greatest political mistake in modern South African history. And so, seeing the President is now cleaning house, I would like to suggest that he sweeps in front of his own doorstep before he removes a DA deputy minister for doing his job, but isn't prepared to move other ministers and deputy ministers for not doing as theirs. That is hypocrisy of the highest form, and it cannot be brooked. Now, the ball is now then in the President's court, and he must show us now that he's a man of his word. Madam Speaker, it would be very easy for a party that had been treated with such disdain from a coalition partner to vote against this bill today. But precisely because we are nothing like the ANC, the DA will always put South Africa's interests over narrow party interests. We will vote for this bill today, not for politics, but for South Africa. And
Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members.
And in doing so, we will demonstrate to all of our coalition partners that when we give our word, you can rely on it, and that when we say we're going to do something, we will do it. However, this is now a moment of truth. Within the next 48 hours, we will find out if the DA stands alone as the only party that can be trusted to govern responsibly and take South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honourable member. I now recognise the Honourable Douglas. Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members. Please proceed, honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, honourable members. I greet you all in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I greet you in the name and in the language of the Khoi and San people, the First Nation Aboriginal people of South Africa, cadres. The Mkhonto Wesizwe Party rises to reject the Division of Revenue bill in its current form. This bill is not a tool of economic justice. It is a weapon of elite patronage. Austerity is dressed up in fine language, but the people still go hungry. Rural schools still crumble. Clinics still turn away patients. Vacancies remain, and our ancestral land still lies in the hands of a few. We are told we are being fiscally responsible by this government, but what does that mean when 426.3 billion rand, the second largest item after education, is now consumed by debt service costs? This grows to 477.5 billion by 2027 at 7.4%. Outpacing social spending, growing only at 4.9%. Our debt to GDP ratio is 77.4%, higher than most African countries, and we are borrowing just to pay interest. This indeed is economic insanity. We are a sovereign nation that owns platinum and PMGs, the most in the world. We own iron ore, oil, gas, coal, and mineral-rich land, but we behave like beggars. Our people live in poverty. Why? Because this GNU, this ANC, and this Division of Revenue budget wants to keep the status quo for the people who are beneficiaries of apartheid. They are beneficiaries of colonialism, and they are still in power today through the ANC, through the DA, in this GNU. Honorable Mayimani wants to talk about investment, but how can you talk investment without land justice? We first got to deal with land justice. We first got to take the land back. We first got to take the resources back. We got to beneficiate it, and then we can talk about investment, Mr. Chair. The DA came up here and was talking nonsense to our people. When we look at the city of Cape Town, I'm a Cape Townian. This is the worst run province. This is the worst run city. If you are a colored person, if you are a black person, this is the worst run place. You talk about clean audits. What about poverty? What about housing? Where's the jobs for our people? Where's the electricity for our people? You let niks vir ons mense gemaak hier. You evict our people every day on the Cape Flats. You throw our people out of houses to make way for developers, for white developers who come in here and take our people's land, take our people's houses, and our people get stuck on the ground, on the land. We want to say, the ANC, you've moved away from the Freedom Charter. Why are you talking about the Freedom Charter? You in business and you in government with our oppressors. You are in government with the very people who took our land, who took our minerals, who took our resources and leave our people in poverty every day. You are no longer fighting for the liberation. You are fighting for the oppression of our people. We look at the municipalities are collapsing in this country. 163 of 257 municipalities are financially distressed. And let me say, most of them are run by the ANC, the DA, and its coalition partners. Yet municipal allocations grow only by 3.4%, below the projected inflation of 5.5%. 78 billion is owed to Eskom, yet no structural intervention exists in this budget, Mr. Chair. Instead of empowering local development, this bill empowers DBSA consultants and urban pilot projects with no local oversight. Mr. Chair, there's so many ghost workers. They cost us between 5 and 25 billion annually. They can go for housing. They can go for our clinics. They can save our people. But no, we are using it on consultants and we're giving it on ghost workers. So corruption is something that's endemic in the GNU. It's something that's been going on for 30 years. Julle kan nie hier kom en julle self wit smee nie. Julle is swart met julle gemors, met julle wat julle ons mense se lewens weggevat het. Julle ons mense se land weggevat. Julle ons mense vermoor. Maar nou wil hy hier kom en julle wil vir ons sê julle is mooi en julle is soets. Nee, julle het vir ons mense neergedruk. En nou staan die mense op saam met MKP. Nou staan die mense op. Ons as kleurige mense staan op. Ons as swart mense staan op. Ons as Khoisan mense staan op. Ons as Zulus en Xhosas, ons staan saam met MKP. En ons sê genoeg is genoeg. Nie meer nie. Nie meer nie. Honorable Chair, I want to say in closing, this is our land. These are our minerals. This is our people. Africa exports 100 billion rand annually in raw minerals. South Africa alone holds over 2.5 trillion rand in rare earth minerals and gas. Yet we borrow from the IMF. This is insanity. We need to nationalize our strategic minerals. We need state-led beneficiation and a new land and mineral revenue model rooted in justice, not debt. Ambase, we are going to take things over. We're going to change things, and we're going to take
Honourable
our
member,
people
your time
out
is
of
now
poverty.
expired. Thank you.
Ambase!
Thank you. Order, honourable members. I now recognize the Honourable Galeka and Mazibuko.
Honourable Chair, it is disappointing, to say the least, that despite the total consolidated spending in the 2025 Division of Revenue Bill growing at an annual average rate of 5.4% and the lion's share of it going to social wage, there are some parties that suggest that this bill leads to austerity. Fellow South Africans, this bill is far from austerity, and any attempt to suggest otherwise is a widely inaccurate and strikingly unrealistic representation of reality. In fact, any party that is pessimistic about this bill is narrowly committed to ignorance. The GNU partners are entirely coherent, consistent, and free of contradiction about this bill. These partners are in support of this bill as it meets the socio-economic expectations of the electorate. From the ANC's perspective, Honourable Chair, we have thoroughly and seriously assessed the desirability and viability of this bill and concluded that it is compatible with our bold proclamations in the Freedom Charter and the Ready to Govern document. These two important documents envisioned an active post-apartheid democratic state with policy measures aimed at eliminating poverty and inequality and responding to the basic needs of the population. This bill, Honourable Chair, mainly reflects a clear continuity of the ANC's bold proclamations embodied in the documents I have mentioned, as it is instrumental and effective in addressing poverty and inequality. In short, this bill provides a sufficient basis of a dignified life for most black people whom we promised benefits of the ANC's better life for all have yet to materialize. Not surprisingly, this bill allocates an estimated 106 billion to municipalities to expand access to free basic services such as electricity and water as prerequisites for reducing poverty and inequality. Kulabo abangathathi ntweni. Most underprivileged households lament that free basic services like electricity and water subsidized by the government are glaringly inadequate and very probably inappropriate as they make marginal improvements in their lives. And because these basic services support the lowest standard of living, their capacity to lift low-income households out of poverty and inequality traps is limited. The ANC agrees that the concerns raised by the disadvantaged households that free basic services have been set exceptionally low for decades is certainly valid. And this is why the Department of Corporate Governance has finally confronted the fact that the white paper on local government has to be reviewed to create more fiscal space for municipalities to deliver on the constitutional mandate of the local government. As we appreciate the confidence shown by Joburg councillors in the ANC yesterday. Similarly, National Treasury is currently reviewing the local government equitable share formula so that municipalities can adequately provide for free basic electricity and water to low-income deserving families. In the interim, the bill allocates marginal above inflation increases in social grants to supplement free basic services and provide an income cushion for low-income households whose livelihoods are precarious and distressed. These above inflation increases in social grants are informed by the ANC's key priority of reducing poverty and tackling the rising cost of living in 2025, articulated in President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address in February this year. These above inflation increases in social grants, while welcome, are not meaningful fiscal buffers for abantu abahola kancinci. This is because the fuel levy, whose inevitable consequences harm low-income households, makes above inflation increases in social grants woefully inadequate. This is why President Ramaphosa emphasized in his 2025 State of the Nation address, Kawai City, I quote, "Our most urgent task is to grow our economy so that we can create jobs, reduce poverty, and improve the lives of all South Africans," close quote. Whilst the President's emphatic call to grow the economy is a step in the right direction, National Treasury forecast of 1.4% GDP growth in 2025 will further destabilize social grants as the primary source of income for low-income households. Hence, the ANC urges National Treasury to show trenchant support for and defense of the Basic Income Grant, BIG, as it can cushion low-income households against precarity and help them improve their circumstances. Of course, it is impractical to roll out a universal BIG that covers both adults and children, which is especially important in South Africa, in which the child support grant, while it is increased above inflation in this bill, is a far cry from meeting children's basic needs and basic food requirements, as it remains below the lower bound poverty line of 796. While, of course, there is a strong moral case for child support grant to be pegged to the lower bound poverty line, National Treasury is not in a sound position to make significant increases in the child support grant due to government's multiple competing priorities in a limited fiscal space. But to say there is no fiscal space for increases in the child support grant is not to say it is not possible. The ANC remains committed to Freedom Charter, which pronounces that, I quote, "Rent and prices shall be lowered, food plentiful, and no one shall go hungry." Hence, allocations to the National School Nutrition Program, NSNP, in this bill remain unchanged from the March budget at 10.3 billion, reflecting a 5.3% nominal and a 1.2% real increase after adjusting for inflation. Even though hunger and food insecurity remain at distressingly high levels, the NSNP prevents over 9 million children from low-income households in nearly 20,000 schools from going hungry, and thus help curb worsening food insecurity in the country. We talk facts. While the fuel levy hike risks absorbing much of the NSNP's marginal budget increase, thereby limiting its reach and impact, National Treasury should consider mobilizing revenues sustainably without externalizing the cost of fiscal consolidation onto low-income households. Last year, the ANC-led GNU signed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, which is pivotal for ensuring that education is accessible and inclusive for all South Africans. Amongst other things, this act makes grade R compulsory, and this is an important intervention which can break away from the legacy of the racist and willfully neglectful Bantu education system that has equipped the vast majority of citizens with nothing. To make this act count and ensure that its capacity for transformation is not blunted, this bill increases early childhood development allocation by 2.9 billion from 10.6 billion in the 2024 financial year to 13.6 billion in the 25-26 financial year, marking a significant 27.8% year-on-year jump, which is the largest investment ECD has ever received. An additional 10 billion over the 2025 medium-term expenditure framework will be allocated, other things equal, to raise ECD subsidy from 17 to 24 per child per day to extend coverage to 700,000 more children, with subsidized enrollment expected to grow from 800,000 to 1.5 million during 27-28 financial year. Honorable Chair, these numbers speak volumes where the naysayers choke on slogans. Ukukhuluma kuchip ukwenza dololo. In conclusion, the ANC and its genuine partners in the GNU stands united. We will not allow our developmental state to be choked by right-wing scare tactics. No,
Honourable Member, your time is now expired. Thank you.
To hijack our message of hope. Amanda.
Order, Honourable Members. I now recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance.
Kushushu. Ngiyatshisa ndawo. Let me start by saying what this bill is about. What this bill is about. I've listened to everybody what's been saying, but what the bill is about fulfilling a constitutional obligation of dividing a national raised revenue vertically between the different spheres of government and horizontally among the differences. What it does? Vertically between the different spheres of government and horizontally. That's what it does.
Order, Honourable Members.
That's what Section 214 of the Constitution says we must do. That's exactly what we're doing today. Very few colleagues try to comment. I know in the context of elections, people get cash up and start dealing with the elections. We have to focus, put our minds around that. And say, what are those resources now which are being allocated to the different spheres of government? Colleagues have made on the proportional differences between the different spheres of government. What is missing in the debate right through? Somebody says, we don't have doctors, doctors are toying and so on. But what we're doing in this budget, we're exactly funding those doctors. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing by passing this bill. By refusing to pass it, by the way, and make the noise about doctors that are doing, we are refusing us to fund those doctors. Your action must match what your aspirations are. If your aspirations, you want those doctors and teachers to be funded, then vote for the budget. So that's what we're talking about. What this budget also talks about, there's some colleague who talks about the SRD grant, which again, I've been telling to people that part of the difficulty is that we must begin to understand how the budget process works. We said the SRD, it may not be reflected over the medium term. It may not be reflected, but is budgeted for. Why is it not reflected? Again, I must repeat this thing. Government has got a committee chaired by Honourable Math, which is looking at the active labour market policies. How do we consolidate those programs? For instance, the World Bank published a documentation which says, for instance, on the skill side of the active labour market, it's scattered all over about 10 departments. We need to consolidate the active labour market policies into one profile. And social development, this grant is part of those. What? Let me do a definition of what active labour market policies consist of. Theoretically, it consists of the following: social assistance, social insurance, and public employment programs and any related issues. That's what government is going to be dealing with, and that's why you may not see it, but we have explained it to it. But the problem, if you don't listen, you won't find, you won't understand. You won't understand it. So that's what we're trying to do. The Constitution enjoins us to do the division of revenue, take into account functions. Functions. And we're more than open to have this discussion. It's all very well to say, okay, a particular sphere of government must have X amount. But you must say, therefore, what are the functions that sphere of government does compared to others? For instance, there's other spheres of government whose very nature is labor-intensive. Provinces, for instance, have got high-intensive labor. Teachers, health workers, and so on and so on. What are you going to do? National has got the defense force, has got the police, has got all of those things. These are functions when you discuss. You must not discuss, you must discuss and take into account who performs which functions, what is the nature of those functions, what are the resources associated with those functions. The second set of issues, when we talk about local government, much as I agree that needs to be done in order to help local government, but we must not necessarily encourage people to do wrong things. Let me just give you an example. You don't sit in a hall like this and decide you spend money you don't have. A number of these local governments sit, 175 of them, have met, passed a resolution in a council to spend money they don't have. And then when you find that they're in a crisis, what's going to happen? That's a recipe for disaster. Yabona ke phaya ekhaya ndithi pha kuqeqeshele egadini okwehagu. Kuqeqeshele egadini okwehagu because awuzuthi abantu bemosha ubaqhwabela izandla. Awuzubaqhwabela izandla. Municipalities have got challenges, we accept that. Let me just give you an example. One mayor calls me, she says, okay, I want to employ some police in my municipality. I said, by all means, that's your decision. If you have got money. She says, no, I'm still going to collect. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. You collect first and employ. Right? Listen to the story. Then August, she comes back and say, by the way, can you give us an advance on our equity brochure? We've run out of cash. I said, but if you employed the police, what would have happened? So, let me just say...
Order, honourable members.
Let me just say, in the context of a campaign for elections, it's tempting to say all of these things people are saying, not talk about the realities that are confront us. And the unfortunate thing, my job requires me to be truthful. Does not require me to be, when I talk as if I'm talking in the rally. You know? So, in summary, Chairperson, what we are dealing here, we are dealing with the equitable allocation of resources between the different spheres of government. It says equitable, it doesn't say equal. that conceptual framework is quite important as well. Conceptually, it says equitable, it does not say equal, because it precisely understands that functions are not the same. Are not the same. Let me conclude by saying it is easy to use a slogan called austerity, even when there's no austerity, when the budget is trying to address the basic population needs such as education and health, which this budget does. That's what this budget does. But you all fight here in these meetings. When I've got a budget, I was worried. A joiner said, "Oh, my Lord, my budget again is in trouble." And these ones are going to accuse me, but and what's the budget? When you guys fight all over your own issues, and then I get up, call my budget got trapped into these battles. I'm happy for placing South Africa above anything else. I think that's all of us. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Order, honourable members.
Thank you, Chairperson. Objection to reading the second time, no, but we object to the budget.
You object to the bill being read a second time.
No,
That objection is noted.
No.
Are there any further objections? Are there any further objections? There is no further objections. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Division of Revenue Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Debate on International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, Breaking the Chains, Prevention, Treatment and Recovery for All.
Order, honourable members. I see a few of you are preparing to leave the auditorium. Will you do so quietly and in an orderly manner, please, so that we can proceed with the business of the day. I now recognize the Honourable Ramaila, who will be the first speaker in this debate.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the August House and fellow South Africans. Today we stand united in recognition of the International Day Against Drug
Order, honourable members. Honourable members who are leaving the auditorium, may you do so quietly and in an orderly manner, please.
Today we stand united in recognition of the International Day Against Drug Abuse.
Honourable Ramaila, will you just take a seat, please? Why do you want to be recognized, honourable member?
There was an expectation of us as MK Party and the Progressive Caucus on whether we are going to vote on the bill. So just give guidance on that. I don't understand the excitement from other members.
Yes, no, the member is asking a question. I'll respond to him. There was no division called for.
So there must not be excitement.
There's no division called for. Your objection was recorded. I asked the question more than once, and we moved on with the business of the day.
You asked for a second reading.
No.
No. Don't dribble us, Honourable Chair.
Honourable members.
Chair, don't dribble us.
No, Honourable member. Honourable member, I asked, are there any objections?
Oh, no, you didn't.
The objection was noted.
The reason why I'm raising...
And we have passed that
Chair,
point now.
No, Chair, you are dribbling us.
I cannot...
No, Chair, you are dribbling us.
Honourable member, the question was asked.
No, Chair.
The objection was made.
I'm correcting you.
There was no request.
That's a rose on a point of direction.
Honourable member, I want to get on with the business of the day.
No, you can't.
You are out of order.
No, you are out of order, Chair.
Honourable member.
Chair, you are out of order. You are dribbling us. You are dribbling us. No, Chair, you can't do that. No, Chair.
Honourable member.
No, Chair, please check with your table. You asked if the bill can be read for the second time.
Honorable
Not
Chingila.
for objections. You haven't asked for objections. You
Honorable-
asked if there was an objection
Honorable
for the
Chief
bill
Whip.
to be read
No.
the second time. No, Chair.
Honorable Chief Whip, the question was asked, the objection was noted, and nobody, and the answer will show it. And we are going to move on from this point. We're going to get on with the business of the day. Thank you. Honorable Ramaila, you may continue.
Chair, we can't move before we get clarity.
I
on
made a
this.
ruling, Honorable
No,
Member.
Chair, it cannot be. You
I
dribbled
made
us.
a ruling.
No, Chair. No, today we are refusing.
Honorable Members,
No,
I've
can't.
made a ruling. If you are not happy with the ruling, you may
No, we are
write
not,
to
Chair.
the
This
Speaker.
is very important. We came here for this purpose. You cannot do this to us. No.
Honorable Member,
Chair.
Honorable Member, I've made a ruling. If you don't accept the ruling,
No, Chair.
you can write
You are
to the
being
Speaker.
unfair and you are intimidating
Honorable
us.
Member, will you take your seat?
Chair, don't intimidate.
Honorable
No,
Chingila,
Chair.
take your seat, please.
No, but Chair, equally.
Will you remove the microphone from the Honorable Chingila? Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. I've made a ruling on this matter, and I'm not going to review it. Honorable Dlamini, why do you want to be recognized? Honorable Chingila, take your seat, please.
No, thank you, Chair. The question that you asked was on reading for the second time. You never asked on the bill whether we are accepting or objecting it.
No.
So, Chair, wait. Just be
Honorable members.
Just be patient with us.
Honorable
Chair.
members, you see, it doesn't assist
just
the
be patient
process
with
if
us,
you
Chair.
also interject.
You
I
are
can't
sitting
hear.
there, you are saying you are the authority. It doesn't matter what you decide. But the truth is that you never asked that we accept or we object on this bill. You asked for the second reading. That's why the chief whip of MKP, she even explained that I'm not objecting on the second reading.
No,
So,
Honorable-
Chair, please,
Honorable
just do the
Dlamini,
right thing.
Yes.
That we're asking nicely.
I'm doing the right thing. I'm applying the rules of the House.
But that's not
No.
the rules that you are applying.
I've made a
You are
ruling.
just bulldozing us, Chair,
I've
because
made a
you
ruling,
think you've got
and
authority.
my
What you are
ruling
doing
will
is
stand.
extremely wrong.
If you are unhappy with the ruling, you may write to the Speaker, and it will be dealt with. Honorable members, we want now to get on with the business of the day. The ruling has been made. The ruling stands. It will not be reviewed. Honorable Skosana, why do you want to be recognized? I want to draw your attention to Rule 92.
We want to put it on record that you are rejecting it and we don't recognize your rule.
Okay, that's fine. Order, honorable members. Honorable Skosana.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, no, ngiyathokoza mgcini isihlalo.
Honorable members, I can't hear the honorable member.
Yeah, ngifuna ukuthi emgcini isihlalo ukuthi wena njenganje uchief whip umzwile ukuthi utheni. Bothi sibhale angeke sisabuya la. We are calling for a division here. Lento yakho yokuthi abantu bakhambile angeke
Honorable member,
ihelebe.
take your seat. I made a ruling.
Uyasropa.
Take your seat.
Anyaropa.
Order, honorable members. Honorable Chief Whip. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair. I want you to be consistent. What you normally do is to first ask if any objections to the bill, and then you move and say, can you do it? Can you do the reading? So you skipped the first step and went straight on to the second reading. And if you are not going to go back, I want you to record that the EFF is not supporting.
Thank you,
So
honorable
please,
members.
thank you.
Honorable members, I've made a ruling in terms of the rules of the National Assembly.
Oh, but you skipped a step.
You can follow.
You skipped a step, Chair.
No steps were skipped, honorable member.
You did.
Honorable member Ramaila, will you now continue, please?
Thank you, Chair. I was still saying today we stand.
Order, honorable members.
Today we stand united in recognition of the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking Day that comes profound significance not just as a calendar observance, but as a clarion call for our collective conscience. The choice of June 26 is deeply symbolic, commemorating Lin Zhenshu's courageous dismantling of the opium trade in Yumen, Ganzhong, which concluded on June 25, 1839, just before the first opium war in China. And I would want to hear quote words of former President Nelson Mandela in his speech that was read by the late Minister Dula Oma, in which he said the following: that nation's international drug control program of SA's legal workshop on sub-regional cooperation against drug trafficking, and when he said, drug trafficking networks have grown, especially due to their unscrupulous attitude of bribing the people and terrorizing the honest. These cartels are traditionally apolitical and are motivated primarily by financial greed. But they are they are causing and enlisting the voluntary and forced cooperation of key role players in both the public and private sector. The extent of their activities can lead to a real threat to the ability of government to assert its authority and maintain peace and security. It is bad enough that many individuals are destroyed by the drug abuse. The real enemy is the drug merchants. The extent of the problem can be seen from the estimates by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development that at least $85 billion in drug profits are annually laundered through the financial markets worldwide. As we gather in this August House Chair, we do so as proud members of the global community, steadfast in our commitment to the United Nations vision of a drug-free society. South Africa's dedication extends far beyond diplomatic courtesy. We are signatories to all three international drug control conventions: the Single Convention of Narcotic Drugs of 1961, the Convention of Psychotropic Substances of 1971, and the United Nations Convention Against Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances of 1988. Our partnership with the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime tells a story of genuine collaboration and enduring relationship that has implemented transformative projects that reach into the heart of our communities, establishing community-based counseling and treatment services, launching comprehensive national drug awareness programs in our schools, and developing targeted prevention initiatives for our most vulnerable population. Honorable members, we cannot speak of drug abuse as an isolated phenomenon, like a malignant tumor. It spreads its destructive influence through every fiber of our social fabric, creating a web interconnected suffering that touches individuals, families, and entire communities. Consider the profound tragedy unfolding in our homes. When substance abuse enters households, it does not merely affect the user. It shatters the very foundation of family life. Children in these households face a cruel lottery of neglect, abuse, and attachment disorders that will echo through their lives, compromising their emotional and mental health in ways that may never fully heal. The statistics paint a heartbreaking picture, noting that parents with substance abuse disorders are 3 times more likely to abuse their children physically or sexually. These children, robbed of their innocence and security, carry forward this trauma into their own futures. They are 50% more likely to be arrested as juveniles and 40% more likely to commit violence. The tentacles of this crisis extend into our streets and our communities, where drug abuse fuels vicious cycle of criminal activity. Research consistently demonstrates that drug crimes contribute significantly to elevated rates of violence and property crimes within affected communities. The disparation bone of addiction transforms ordinary citizens into perpetrators of violence as the compulsive need for substance overrides moral boundaries and social responsibility. This interaction becomes particularly devastating when we consider the plight of women and girls in our communities. In areas like the Cape Flats, gangs have become the primary form of social organization where legitimate alternatives are scarce. Trapping women and girls in inescapable cycles of violence and exploitation, the criminal sanctions we impose on drug use and commercial sex work, rather than offering pathways to redemption, often serve to deepen stigmatization and create additional barriers to reintegration into the society. And Honorable Chair, this is a matter that affects almost of us sitting in this House, either directly or indirectly. And it's a matter that we need to take very serious. No wonder why the businessmen attending a meeting in America, the Oval Office, raised a concern about crime, unabated crime that is taking place in the Cape Flats. So the African National Congress will want to take this opportunity to make a clearing call to all of us across political spectrum, interdepartmentally, for all of us to put shoulders on the arms so that we are able to put arms on the shoulders so that all of us, we are able to fight and combat the illicit drugs that are busy penetrating our country of South Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, House Chair. I would like the country to look at this auditorium today. Today we're talking about drug abuse and something that's tearing our communities, and people like John Steenhuisen, Honorable John Steenhuisen, leader of the DA, walks out. Leader of the PA, Gayton McKenzie, walks out. Many MPs here leaves the House when we're discussing an important issue that's affecting millions of lives of our South Africans. But colleagues, I am here to talk to you about our role as members of parliament, as honourable members that we call ourselves. As honourable members, I seek your protection.
Yes, Order, Honourable Deputy Minister. You're sitting right in front of the podium and you are really interjecting and disrupting the speech of the member. Please continue, Honourable Member.
So we've seen today an example of what is going on in this country. We are the lawmakers. We are here to protect, uphold the law. We are here to make laws to protect our citizens. Yet we find that in this very House, the laws are broken. 2 incidents happened. Number one, Honourable John Steenhuisen used this platform to come here and talk about something that was not related to the topic at all. he wanted to come here and make a media statement.
Order,
Totally
honourable
out
members.
of the topic.
Order. Honourable Reddy, take your seat. The Honourable Michaelakas.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, with due respect, between Rule 92, a point of order. Unlike you, I know the rules, Honourable Member. House Chairperson, the Honourable already indicates that the Honourable Steenhuisen broke the rules of the House. However, none of their members were actually on their feet on a point of order. We did see today that the Chief Whip of the Opposition is sleeping. That's why she missed the vote.
Honourable Member,
but they should have stood
please
up
take
on a
your
point
seat
of
now.
order at the relevant
take your
point.
seat.
Thank you.
Please proceed, Honourable Reddy.
I beg to differ with you.
Honourable Reddy.
Honourable Brian
Reddy.
Molefe.
Honourable Reddy, take your seat. There's a... You're no longer taking a point of order. Please continue, Honourable Reddy.
Honourable Brian Molefe raised a point of order that Honourable Steenhuisen was completely out of the topic. But what happened? Suddenly, Mr. Ramaphosa removes one of his deputy ministers. They get a shock. They get worried that they're going to lose their cabinet ministers. So he comes here in a state of desperation and uses this space to make a media statement. And we want us to believe that we are upholding the law. Secondly, we would dispute the revenue bill because it doesn't work in favor of our people. We object to it. And this House Chair allows those infringements to take place. And this is where it starts. Today,
Honourable Reddy,
what I have to
will you
say
just
to
take your seat, please? I want to draw your attention to Rule 87. Reflections upon the House and the proceedings and its decisions that it takes. The rule is clear that you may not reflect in a disrespectful manner upon the House. Take your seat, please. Or its forums and committees or upon their proceedings and decisions. I was presiding at the time and I dealt with the matter. The rules spell out a process that may be followed, and please follow that process instead of questioning the decisions of the House. You may proceed.
Thank you very much. Honourable colleagues, I would like you, if you are sensitive and if you have a weak heart, to please put on your earphones, because what I'm going to say to you today is going to have a real impact on you if you have a weak heart. I do not stand here as a member of parliament. I stand here before you as a father. I stand before you as a brother. I stand before you as a friend and as a member of a hurting community. I stand with the weight of countless South African families who are crying out for help as drugs tighten their grips on our homes, our children, and our futures. Honourable House Chair, last week in Phoenix, a tragedy unfolded that shook me to the core. An 83-year-old grandmother who happens to be blind, Kamachi Naika, was brutally stabbed to death in her home. Her daughter, a 63-year-old Shirley Appelsamy, survived multiple stab wounds and now lies in hospital. I happened to have visited her. Her throat was slit because the assailant tried to take out her chain. Now here is the most grotesque part. The perpetrator of this was not somebody unknown. It was actually her own grandson. A child that she once cradled, now consumed by addiction and turned into a monster. But this was not just an act of violence. It was a murder of trust. A grandmother slain by the very child she once nursed. Members, what kind of darkness is this? What kind of poison corrupts so deeply that families become foe? The answer is simple. It is drugs. But Phoenix is not alone. Here in Cape Town, a teenage boy was found lifeless behind his school, a needle still in his arm. In El Dorado Park, a mother had to pull a child out of a shallow grave after a gang war fueled by turf and tick. If you didn't know what tick is, it's also another form of common drug that's easily available to our children. In Chatsworth, I met a mother who had no choice but to chain her son to a bed just to keep him from stealing and using drugs again. These are not horror stories. These are real people. They are our people. I have worked with street children. There was a young girl that I met on the street, Lindiwe. She was 11 years old, a most beautiful child. She ran away from home. She refused to go back. She was hooked on drugs. Her mother was a school principal and would come to the streets in the evenings just to see a child and beg a child to come home. I met the mother. I met the child. 3 days after that meeting, we found a lifeless body near a manhole on Mahatma Gandhi Street. That is the reality. As my own children were growing up, my wife and I would pray every night that they never come into contact with drugs. Because when that substance enters your home, peace will leave. And it doesn't knock. It barges in. It breaks everything. Trust, joy, love, and everything. Drug dealers, my friends, are real. And they are not hiding. They prey on our children. They stand at school gates. They whisper offers in corners. They sponsor events and shake the hands of politicians and the police. Some are even protected. And in some cases, the police are turning a blind eye. Or worse, they are taking a cut. Let me ask you, and I want to be honest about this. Is there anyone here who can truly stand up and say, you are untouched by this crisis? Is there no one in your family, in your community, in your heart, who has not been consumed by this plague? Even in this house, I know there are members who understand the pain I speak of, who have buried, who have wept, who have prayed like we have. Rehabilitation is supposed to be our hope, but too often it has become a failure. It's underfunded, overcrowded, and disconnected from reality. Over 60% of those who seek help relapse within months. But there is hope. In the city of Tshwane, the community-oriented substance use program, a methadone-based treatment model, has shown great promise. More than 70% of the participants remain in treatment after 6 months. That's not just a number, that is a lifeline. Imagine if this success could be replicated across our nation. If every child in pain had access to this kind of care. But it cannot happen on hope alone. It needs commitment, it needs funding, it needs leadership from each and every one of us. Not to use this opportunity to show our anger against each other. Let's transfer that anger to the drug dealers, to drug substance abuse. Let's join hands, all of us, and let's do it. It needs funding and it needs a political will. And yet, while we host expensive conferences, etc., the very backbone of our community response is dying. Families are suffering in silence. Members' addiction doesn't care about color, class, or creed. On behalf of MK Party, the progressive parties here, we want to make this call. We want to establish a national crack anti-drug unit, independent and comprised of local police structures. Empower them with the ability to raid, seize, and arrest quickly, effectively, and fearlessly. If SARS can attach your accounts without getting a court order, why can't we give the police the power to go in and attach the drugs, confiscate the drugs from drug dens? Roll out the successful Tshwane methadone model across the country. Ring-fence a dedicated budget for rehabilitation services. Task the Department of Health and the Department of Social Development alongside the Department of Police to lead this charge, not in words, but in daily measurable action. Let us break the chains, not only those around the wrists of addicts, but the chains that bind families in silence, that bind communities in fear, that bind governments in indifference. Let this parliament rise with one voice. For Kamachi, for Shirley, for the children beneath the bridges, for the mothers who have run out of tears. Let us remember as this parliament that we broke the chains. We did not just debate them. There is a person, I don't know what's his name, but he accused our Spitfire, our spokesman, of being a drug addict. What's his name? fraud something. He went and got tested, and he proved that this guy is a liar because the test showed that he's clear. So maybe we should all be doing that even with our own children. Thank you for listening, and let us make this a reality. Let's fight the scourge of drugs in our society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Masango.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, good morning, good afternoon rather. A picture paints 1,000 words. We're on a street corner in any town in South Africa. A young boy, barely 15 years old, stares blankly into the distance through glazed eyes. His future is slipping away as he chases the next hit of Nyawope. His mother, who works 2 jobs, has no idea how to save him. His school has given up. The clinic has a long waiting list. And the state is silent. This is not just one boy. This is our country, a symptom of another lost generation, lost to substance abuse. The South African Society for Psychiatrists shows that one in every 5 South African adults abuses substances, that is alcohol, dagga, and codeine. Millions of lives impacted translate to millions of families hurting. Let me break this down a bit, honorable members. A 2009 study found that alcohol abuse was costing South Africa nearly 10% of our GDP. That is 37.9 billion rand in lost productivity, illness, and crime. The ban on alcohol sales during the COVID-19 pandemic reduced the number of hospital admissions due to alcohol-related accidents. Young people are increasingly falling into binge drinking and cannabis use. These are the very people we call our future, yet we are letting them drown. And the consequence? It is gender-based violence and femicide. It is crime. It is poverty. It is HIV. It is tuberculosis. It is broken homes. It is homelessness. It is violence. So here is the question. Where is the political will? When the Central Drug Authority was created, we were told it would oversee and monitor the implementation of the National Drug Master Plan. The CDA would also coordinate efforts across government departments and civil society to counter substance abuse and illicit drug trafficking in South Africa. It would also be the apex authority that would oil the engine of government in its valiant fight against the scourge that is substance and drug abuse. In truth, it is merely a passenger, like all of us, sidelined, underfunded, and ignored. It sits inside the Department of Social Development, shackled by red tape. It qualifies to stand as an independent public entity, but no one has acted on this mandate. It simply observes. We call it a watchdog, but it's a toothless watchdog. And in the meantime, families are left to pick up the pieces. Mothers bury their children, schools lose learners, employers lose workers, and communities have lost hope. Honorable Chairperson, we cannot wait any longer. Change must happen, and it must happen today. We must make the Central Drug Authority a fully independent public entity that is properly funded with its own board and leadership. We must invest in prevention. We must put resources into schools, youth centers, NGOs, and evidence-based tools like Assist to reach young people early. We must expand access to treatment. Only a tiny fraction of people who need help actually receive it. Let's build more facilities, train more professionals, and make recovery a realistic, accessible goal. We must fight the supply of drugs on our streets by strengthening law enforcement and clearing drugs from our communities. We must use data wisely. We must fund Sakendu, study emerging trends, and constantly refine our strategy based on what works. We must tackle poverty, because without jobs and hope, our youth will keep turning to substances. Goal number 7 of the National Drug Master Plan is clear. Fighting poverty is central to fighting addiction. Honorable Chairperson, we have the policies, we have the strategies, we have the warnings from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, from experts, and from communities across South Africa. What we do not have is urgency. If we fail to act now, if we don't fix the system, if we don't fund the response and put people at the center of our action, we are not just failing as policymakers, we are failing as human beings. Breaking the chains of addiction is not just about laws or reports. It's about courage, the courage to care and the courage to act. Let this Parliament be remembered not for empty debates, but for action. Let us free the Central Drug Authority, back prevention, and restore the hope of recovery. Not one more life should be lost to the scourge of substance and drug abuse. Honourable Chairperson, I want to thank the officials at the Department of Social Development, the Central Drug Authority, and the departments and stakeholders at national, provincial, and local levels who have been working tirelessly despite the challenges I have just outlined. Your sacrifices are commendable, but this Parliament carries a greater duty to enable the duty of enabling an enabling environment where our work can succeed and where we can free our people, young and old, from the shackles of addiction. As I conclude, Chairperson, I invite you, honourable members, to reflect on the powerful title of a book that was written by Alan C. Jones and Micaiah L. Gent Mills, where they say, and I quote, "Fight poverty, not the poor." And for our debate today, I would like to say, let us fight addiction, not the addicted. Let us fight for dignity, let us fight for recovery, and let us fight for lives. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honourable Marais.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Please take a seat, Honourable Marais. Minister.
I just want to apologize to Honourable Mare for this disturbance. I went to the bathroom, but I hear there's somebody here that said I'm not supposed to go to the bathroom. I left. So whoever said that, he must go for induction.
Honourable
Ready,
Minister.
stop your gossiping.
Honourable
Thank you very
Minister,
much.
That is not a point
Thank
of
you.
order, and we've passed on that. Honourable Marais, please take the stand. Continue, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, can we please give a member on the podium an opportunity to speak?
Thank you, Chairperson. Revolutionary greetings to the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF, Julius Selo Malema, Commissars, Grand Forces, and fellow South Africans. Chair, can you please keep quiet? House Chair.
Honourable members, I have requested that can we please give an opportunity to an honourable member on the podium so that we are able to hear one another. Now, your howling and shouting makes it difficult to hear a member on the podium.
People
Please
are dying on
continue.
a daily basis and you got time to play. House Chair, today we mark the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking under the theme, Breaking the Chains, Prevention, Treatment and Recovery of All. I rise not mere to debate, but to echo the voice of the deep heartbreak behind the alarming statistics, the broken families, the agony of many mothers crying through the night as their children battle addiction and unable to find help. This is also a cry for many fathers who wait in pain, praying for their sons to return home, but they vanish into the streets, swallowed by the system that fails to offer a way out. House Chair, this pain is not abstract, it is real, it is raw, it is rising in every corner of our beloved country. It is a pain of deep loss and despair. It's separated amongst other things by the fact that in South Africa, only 118 out of 257 municipalities have established local drug action committees, like DAC, as required by the Prevention and of Treatment of Substance Abuse Act of 70 of 2008. That is a mere 46% compliance rate. What this simply means is that more than half of our municipalities where addiction is most visible and deadly have not localized response structures to coordinate prevention, treatment and recovery. Worse still, the country suffers from weak provincial oversight, leaving many affected communities vulnerable, neglected and abandoned as the crisis spirals out of control. As we deliberate on this matter, House Chair, South Africa is now amongst the world's largest meth markets, and its consequences are deadly. 60 to 80% of violent crime linked to substance abuse, feeding gang violence, gender-based violence, and tearing communities apart. This is not a new problem. It has been rising continuously over years. If we as legislators do not act decisively amongst the scourge of substance abuse now, we will have surrendered our country to the deepest abyss of carelessness, despair, agony, popularity, where we have failed our duty to protect the future of those who will come after us. We will have betrayed the struggles of those who came before us. And if we lose this fight against drug abuse and illicit trafficking, then the lives of many who died resisting the scourge will have died in vain. There's another tragedy too often overlooked, the lack of state-funded rehabilitation centers. In Gauteng alone, more than half of state rehab beds has been defunded. 246 out of 571 bed lost this year, threatening vital non-profit centers with closures. Nationally, only 8 public inpatient treatment centers exist, covering just 6 provinces. Meanwhile, private rehabs is extravagantly expensive, ranging from 3,500 to 50,000 for a 30-day stay, up to 150,000 for longer treatment. For most South Africans, especially low-income families, this is simply impossible. They depend on state or NGO services, which is underfunded, uneven, and overwhelmed. The health impacts, chronic illness, mental collapse, road deaths are immense. Economically, we lose approximately 20 billion annually in lost productivity and healthcare costs. And those who suffer the most are the poor and the vulnerable. We must act now. As the debate of Revenue Bill B15/2025, I propose these critical interventions. Increase funding for LADACs. Allocate those resources to establish LADACs in all 257 municipalities, with provincial departments accountable and compliance and support. Expand state fund rehabs. Reverse the loss of state fund beds. Create adequately resourced public-funded rehabilitation centers in every province and ensure access to those who can't afford it care. Community-based programs, embedded prevention and treatment locally through virtual caucuses, peer support, awareness campaigns, reducing stigma and bringing help closer to those in need. Introduce a specialized police unit to stop the supply of illegal drugs. Strengthening provincial roles. The last page is gone, but I will speak from the heart. Chairperson, the problem, we can all laugh about this. I just put it misplaced.
Honorable members,
Chairperson,
let's just give a member the last
Chairperson,
30 seconds left, please.
we can laugh as much as we like, but on a daily basis, that is my last page, mothers are crying. Children are walking the street looking for food because the mother and the father is not there to take care of them. Mothers and fathers are killing their children, sitting in prisons because they couldn't take the abuse anymore. The abuse that these parents are going through on a daily basis because of drug abuse and children that is addicts, it is too much. It's either we as Parliament come up with a strategic position on what are we going to do to alleviate the problem that we have. The gang violence in Western Cape is not gang violence. It is drug violence. It is happening in Western Cape. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Macri.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Today, the IFP joins the global community in observing the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, a day that highlights the urgent and growing needs to confront one of the most devastating social challenges of our time. Drug and substance abuse are destroying the very soul of our nation. They rob young people of their future, tear families apart, and drive communities into violence, poverty, and despair. This is not just a criminal justice issue. It is a public health, social, and economic crisis. While we commend the tireless work of our police and task teams, we must accept that law enforcement alone will not solve the crisis. We need a national, united, and multi-sectoral response. The IFP has long maintained that the fight against drug abuse must be rooted in our homes, our communities, and our value system. A major contributor to this crisis, particularly in urban areas, in the proliferation of hijacked and abandoned buildings, these structures have become breeding grounds for drug trafficking, abuse, gang activities, and human exploitation. They are no longer mere eyesore. They are death traps for our youth. The IFP calls for urgent action to reclaim these buildings, restore law and order, repurpose them for community use, including as rehabilitation and skills development center. In rural and township areas, sky-high unemployment, especially among young people, creates a perform storm. When dreams are deferred and opportunities are few, many turn to drugs out of hopelessness, boredom, or desperation. Drugs become a dangerous escape when the promise of the better tomorrow feels out of reach. But let us also acknowledge another uncomfortable reality. Even those who are employed, from professionals to factory workers, are not immune. The pressure of work, financial strains, or unresolved trauma can also drive substance abuse. Addiction knows no race, no class, no profession. It is not only a poor man's burden. It touches every segment of society. This is why the IFP believes so strongly in a comprehensive approach, prevention through education, early intervention and youth development, treatment and rehabilitation that is accessible, affordable, and compassionate. Recovery support system that includes job placement, family counseling, and community integration. We also call on the public broadcasters, the SAPC, to fulfill the Constitution duty. It must be a loud, consistent voice in raising awareness, breaking stigma, and informing South Africans about support services. The media must never formalize drug culture. It must challenge it. The IFP sees the pain of parents in Ulundi, in Umlazi, in Soweto, and across the country. Parents watching their children waste away under the grip and nyope, tick, and other deadly substances. We must act. and we must act now. Let us commit to building a South Africa where hijacked buildings will not become heavens for criminals, where youth unemployment is not a pipeline to addiction, and where no South African, employed or not, is left to fight this battle alone. Prevention must be prioritized. Treatment must be available. Recovery must be possible for all. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Peterson.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, fellow South Africans, Sanbonani. Today I rise with a voice not rehearsed in boardrooms, but formed in the reality of township streets, school playgrounds plugged by addiction, and communities drowning in pain while crying out for justice. To speak on a matter that binds humanity in shared struggle, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, under the powerful theme, breaking the chains, prevention, treatment, and recovery for all. We are reminded that drug abuse is not just a criminal issue, it is a human one. Around the world, millions suffer silently. Drugs do not liberate, they imprison. They do not build, they destroy. Young people robbed of their futures, families torn apart, and communities weakened by the ripple effects of addiction. It's not just about breaking the law, it's about breaking the chains of stigma, of suffering, and of neglect. Prevention is our first defense. It is our first line of defense. Education, awareness, and community outreach must replace silence and fear. Schools, families, and governments must work together to equip young people with the tools to resist peer pressure and misinformation. Let us not wait until it becomes a crisis. Prevention is not just cheaper than treatment, it is more humane. But prevention alone is not enough. We must also guarantee treatment for those who are already affected. Addiction is a medical condition, not a moral failure. Access to healthcare and rehabilitation centers and mental health services should not be a luxury. It is a right. It is unacceptable that in the 21st century, we still criminalize addicts instead of supporting them. And finally, let's talk about recovery. Recovery is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong journey, a journey that demands empathy, structure, and community. We must create opportunities for reintegration. Recovery isn't just about being drug-free. It's about rebuilding a life worth living. So today, let us not just observe this day as a formality. Let us use it to demand a global commitment to break the chains of addiction for everyone, everywhere. Prevention, treatment, and recovery must not be a privilege. It must be a promise. Today, I acknowledge Donovan Minnie and Alvino January, who have been in this fight not for applause, but out of divine conviction and community calling. They've built rehab centers from nothing and restored more than 1,000 families across the nation. We also acknowledge Mr. Moloto from Latgak Rehabilitation Center in Limpopo for hearing the cries of parents through South Africa. They do recover. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Poshoff.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Since the real original sin, we live in a broken world. In deel van hierdie gebroke wêreld is die werklikheid van dwelmmisbruik of die misbruik van stowwe oor die algemeen. Nou dit is 'n probleem wat ons baie dikwels probeer om te verbied, maar dit is nie 'n probleem wat om laat verbied nie, dit is 'n probleem wat opgelos moet word, dit is 'n probleem waaraan 'n mens moet werk. Meeste probleme kan jy ongelukkig nie verbied nie. Dwelmmisbruik of die misbruik van enige stowwe, en dan wil 'n mens nie te tegnies raak oor wat is nou alles dwelms nie, begin dit by tabak, is dit eintlik alkohol, is daar gaan nou regtig 'n dwelm of is dit nou nie? Die punt is, daar is sekere redes hoekom mense dwelms begin gebruik of enige stowwe misbruik, en dit gaan oor, kom ons sê basies 3 goed. Mense wat desperaat is en wat van hulle wêreld wil ontsnap, vir wie hulle wêreld eenvoudig ondraaglik is, en dan soek hulle iets om mee te ontsnap. Dan is daar mense wat verveeld is, hulle het te veel. Hulle weet nie eintlik wat om met hulle tyd te doen nie, hulle het nie eintlik sin in die lewe nie, want alles wat hulle wil hê, het vir hulle van self gekom. Hulle het nie 'n doel wat hulle nastreef nie. En dan is die kiek van 'n dwelmmisbruik gee daai ietsie ekstra wat elke mens in 'n dag nodig het. En dan is daar mense wat so gedryf word deur 'n wil om te presteer, dat hulle chemiese hulpmiddels wil gebruik om hulle prestasie op te stoot, om meer te doen as wat hulle eintlik regtig kan doen. Die voorsieners van hierdie dwelms of hierdie middels is natuurlik 'n groot probleem. En as 'n dwelmhandelaar erns doodgeskiet is, en 'n mens voel jammer vir sy familie dat hy nie meer daar is nie, dan moet ek sê, dan raak dit nie aan my hart om te sê, maar hy was so 'n hulpvaardige mens nie. Hy was so vrygewig gewees nie. Want hy was vrygewig gewees op die dood en die elende en die swaar kry van die mense wat hy uitgebuit het. Nou in Suid-Afrika is die hoofstroom van ons politiek is eintlik liberale politieke denke en revolusionêre denke. Nou albei hierdie denkstrome is besig om te sê dat die mens van tradisie, van godsdiens, van die bande van gemeenskap bevry moet word om te wees wie jy werklik kan wees. Konservatiewe politiek doen die teenoorgestelde. In konservatiewe politiek is die gemeenskap, die tradisie, die kerk, die samelewing is alles deel van wat die individu geborge laat voel, wat die individu 'n terugvalposisie gee as dit nie met hom of met haar goed gaan nie, en wat help om trauma te oorkom. Dit is ongelukkig nie regtig deel van die hoofstroom van ons politieke gesprek in Suid-Afrika nie, maar dit behoort te wees. Nou, in die vroeë 1800s, in die vroeë 19de eeu, was die Verenigde Koninkryk, was Engeland in 'n soortgelyke situasie kort na industrialisering, dat het elende gegaan met mense, kindermoord, babamoord was algemeen gewees, die misbruik van gin was eintlik die weergawe destyds van tik, en daai probleem is te bowe gekom. Nie deur politieke aksie nie, alhoewel politieke aksie nodig is, maar dit was veral die herlewing, die godsdienstige herlewing onder leiding van die twee broers Wesley, wat later tot die stigting van die Methodiste kerk gelei het, wat die hele samelewing laat saamwerk het om hierdie probleem op te los. Dit is wat ons moet doen, 'n lewende gemeenskap wat sy lede lewend hou. Baie dankie.
Thank you. Honorable James.
A glimmer of hope left this room when so many members left when we were about to discuss such an important matter. As we commemorate this day, as Action SA, we believe the fundamental structural issues surrounding the Central Drug Authority must be addressed before any new board is appointed. The ongoing misplacement of the CDA within the Department of Social Development, contrary to the spirit of Chapter 10 of the Act, undermines its autonomy and effectiveness. The CDA, intended to be a multi-sectoral coordinating body, has been relegated to the status of a subdirectorate, stripped of its authority and starved of its independence. Despite the National Drug Master Plan requiring all departments, including DSD, to report to the CDA, it is DSD itself that frustrates the work of the CDA. This is a clear conflict of interest. The systemic challenges are well documented in every annual report of the CDA. So we ask, what will be the difference under the new Central Drug Authority Board? Why must we keep appointing these boards for them to be only disempowered and frustrated by the very same dysfunction? The budget for the CDA is pitiful, and even that is not spared from abuse. 400,000 was allocated for the annual report, but it was the CDA itself that scrambled to compile to meet its legislative deadlines. The money still marked as spent. For what? No one knows. 900,000 was set aside to review the NDMP. A year later, the CDA has yet to see even the first draft. DSD controls the process while the CDA is sidelined. So kan dit nie aangaan nie. 12 years into my activism and advocacy, and still I feel as if though it is just the beginning. The more things have changed, the more they stay the same, if not gotten worse. In 2013, when I authored that letter to then President Jacob Zuma, he came to our community and he said, if we do not act swiftly, we cannot call ourselves a government. I ask everyone here today, can we call ourselves a government? Allow me to share with you the pages of a South African mum living with a family member affected by drugs. 14-year-old. He's been out screaming since midnight, threatening to burn our home down if I don't give him 10 rand for his next Nyaupe fix. I've called the police, but the police has told me that it's a family matter. If only they knew what their role was as per the NDMP, that is to inform the family of an involuntary intake, maybe that mother would have had peace. He's been tucking all weekend, sleeping in the classroom, not wearing school uniform. Instead of the department activating their social workers, they have expelled that learner, now loitering in the Western Cape, now sleeping under the bridges right in front of Acacia Park, now begging for food on Jakes Geerwal and Frans Conradie Road, which this members drive past each and every day. So much for a well-run city. Instead of sending him home, the school psychosocial support system should have been activated, but there's only one social worker attending to over 20 schools. He's the community joke, talking to himself, collecting rubbish that he believes is paperwork. When he's violent, we cannot even call the ambulance because the ambulance refuses to go into our communities that's hard hit by drug abuse. We have to continue our children being mental as a result of substance use disorder. The police cannot act because they too say that they are not an ambulance service. We are stuck in the pain of addiction as mothers in this country. He's now 26, the final entry. He's now 26 years old and he's sleeping under a bridge. He's homeless. We've had enough. We cannot cope. We've tried several rehabs. They have failed us. We've tried the police, but they said to us, we must try the court. We've tried the court, but they do not know what to do. It is not a tuck-up. It is not a nyaupe. Honorable members, it is our children, and we have failed them. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Misho.
House Chairperson, the Central Drug Authority presented its 2023-2024 annual report to the Portfolio Committee on Social Development on the 13th of February 2025, providing a very concerning overview of substance abuse and drug trafficking trends in South Africa. In its opening remarks, Deputy Minister of Social Development stressed the devastating impact of substance abuse on individuals, families, and communities, warning that it poses a direct threat to national security, public health, and economic development. Sadly, South Africa continues to serve as both a transit and destination country for illicit drugs, with organized crime syndicates and trafficking networks exploiting air, sea, and land borders to distribute narcotics, according to the Central Drug Authority. The report further examined global, African, local trends, noting that synthetic drugs and the new psychoactive substances are on the rise worldwide. In South African communities, organized crime groups and gangs control most distribution networks. The major hubs in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. The report stressed that informal settlements and poorer communities are the hardest hit by the illegal drug trade. Crystal and nyaupe are the most commonly used and most widespread and dangerous addictive substances in our country, particularly in informal settlements and poorer communities because of their affordability. Nyaupe, one of the cheapest drugs on the market, is a mixture of low-grade heroin, cannabis products, antiretroviral drugs, and other materials used as bulking agents.
Nyaupe is a highly addictive substance with devastating effects on individual users, families, and communities. To service their addiction, poor young people using drugs are struggling to find how to service their addiction. So what they do is they steal valuable things they can lay their hands on in their homes, neighborhoods, leaving their parents, family members, and neighborhoods very upset and angry. The ACDP appeals to government to do much more to rid the communities of illicit drugs by prioritizing the arrest of drug lords who don't care about the young people whose future and lives are destroyed by their greed, cruelty, and uncaring attitude. Despite some progress, the Central Drug Authority highlighted several persistent challenges that require urgent government attention so that we win this fight over these drug lords and drugs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Mishwa. Honorable Kana.
Honorable members, fellow South Africans, we are in the middle of a silent war. A war that is stealing the futures of our young people, tearing families apart, and poisoning the very soul of our communities. This is the war against...
Honorable Kana, can you please... Honorable members, there's a lot of noise coming from that corner there. I'm not sure who's... But please, can we give each other an opportunity for us to be able to hear one another, please? Honorable Kana, please take the podium.
Thank you. This war is a war against illicit drug trafficking and drug abuse. Let me be clear. We must deal harshly with drug dealers and traffickers. These individuals are not just selling illegal substances. They are selling death, addiction, and destruction. They are funding other forms of organized crime like human trafficking. They operate with impunity in too many parts of our country. And the law must respond with the full weight of its power. No more soft gloves. No more leniency. The laws must bite, and they must bite hard. Drugs are destroying lives, and they are closely linked to the rise of gangsterism, particularly in our townships and inner cities. They rob our children of their dreams, mothers of their sons, and communities of their peace. They fuel crime, violence, and hopelessness. But while we come down hard on those who push drugs, we must show compassion to those who are trapped in addiction. We must never criminalize addiction. Addicted individuals need care, support, and access to proper rehabilitation services. They need a path to recovery, not a prison cell. Drug addiction is a healthcare crisis. Honorable members, we also have a duty to ensure that those within the state who are meant to uphold the law do not become its enemies. Police officers, border officials, prosecutors, and even members of the judiciary who collude with drug traffickers must face the harshest possible consequence. They betray the public trust, and their actions enable the suffering of countless citizens. No leniency for them either, only justice. Our ports of entry must be strengthened. We must increase surveillance, invest in better technology, and rotate officers regularly to reduce the risk of corruption. Those doing actual inspections and enforcement must be held to the highest standards of integrity and accountability. Let us make it known today. We will not stand by while drugs claim more lives. We must unite across party lines and act decisively. The time for talk is over. The time for action is now.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Webster.
Honourable Chair, I'd like to use my time today in this debate to give voice to a young South African who, like many other South Africans in his position, often doesn't have their voice heard, even in their own community. His name is Luyanda, and we came across and engaged with Luyanda through a program of one of the organizations that we engage with as a party. This is his letter to us. My name is Luyanda. I'm 24 and I'm recovering from a 5-year drug addiction. I want those in government to hear my story. I grew up in Tembisa. My mother was a domestic worker. My father wasn't around, and I was raised by my grandmother until she died when I was 16. I did okay in school. I thought I'd find a job or study further, but I was met with rejection emails and no opportunities. One day, somebody offered me an opportunity to take the edge off. First weed, then buttons, then nyaope. In the township, you don't need to find drugs. Drugs find you. They're cheaper than bread, and everyone knows where the dealers are. At first, the drugs gave me confidence. Then they took everything, my health, my pride, and my family's trust. I ended up in government rehab, and it helped briefly, but there were too many patients and too little support. I relapsed, and it took an overdose for me to finally get help through a church program. I've been clean for 11 months, but every day is a battle. Here is what I want government to understand. We don't use drugs because we're bad. We use them because we're bored, we're broke, we're traumatized, and we're forgotten. If you want to stop the next Luyanda from falling, give us something to wake up for. Create jobs. More than half of young people are unemployed in this country. Put skills in our communities, not just in leafy suburbs. Stop throwing money at failed programs that don't even reach us. Make mental health services as easy to find as finding a dealer. Find school counselors who offer real support, and clean up our streets. We see the same drug lords every day walking free. Luyanda's story tells us that fighting drug addiction is not just about clinics and rehab centers. It's about making sure that there's a system that works for young people. It's about making sure that education and schools actually empower our young people and set them up for a future. It's about making sure that there are actually jobs for them and there are employment opportunities for them. It's about making sure that when there's a need for social development to intervene, social development can indeed help our young people. And so I want to not only give echo to Luyanda's voice today or give power to Luyanda's voice today, but to also then say to us as members in this House, let's make sure that not only when it comes to drug abuse and those issues, but when it comes to every area of government, we make it work so that it doesn't let down young people like Luyanda. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Shabang.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable members, drug and substance abuse are complex and cross-cutting matters that have far-reaching effect on social and economic factors, as well as serving a threat to public. Other than the drugs that we are mentioning, we also have a problem of alcohol abuse. The previous festive season exemplified the extent of this problem, with findings indicating that alcohol is the leading drug of choice in South Africa, having spent 7.7 billion in a space of a week from December 25 to the 1st of December 24 to the 1st of January 2025. This is indicative of how much, as a nation, we have concerning high consumption rate. The adverse effects of this are particularly felt by the health sector, which becomes overburdened by preventable medical conditions such as alcohol poisoning, acute pancreatitis, which is caused by overconsumption of alcohol. In addition, on our health system, particularly during the festive season, they report high volume of trauma and assault cases. further diverting the very limited critical resources to cater for and address the incidences that could have been prevented. This underscores that such burden imposed on the health sector can be averted through heightening oversight and legislative reforms to manage consumption level. Additionally, drug and substance abuse contribute to the growing threat of communicable and non-communicable diseases through their effects such as impaired judgment that increase the risk of unsafe sex, which escalate the spread of HIV and STIs. Furthermore, studies have also associated drug and substance abuse to increase mental health challenges with anxiety, depression, psychosis, and particular among children. Honorable members, we have also lost far too many of our people due to overdose and other drug and substance abuse. We must never tire of fighting the war against drug and substance abuse. One loss of life is one too many. We must heighten our effort to avoid this catastrophic effect, preserve human life, and create an enabling environment where everyone can lead purposefully and healthy lives, reaching their full potential. Aligned to this year's theme on breaking the chains by focusing on prevention, treatment, and recovery, we note how the youth are at risk due to heightened vulnerability they face, including unemployment and many finding themselves not in education or training. These factors drive desperation among our young people, making them vulnerable to turning to drugs as an escape mechanism or substitute for hope. Therefore, it is not an incident that we predominantly see homeless people in our township and rural communities as hotspots for drug availability and gang recruitment. These are the harsh and brutal ripple effect of exploitative nature of poverty. In strengthening our country preventative measures, harm reduction is a scientifically supported approach to saving lives and limiting long-term health consequences for our people. To this end, the Tobacco Control Bill has been introduced as a strategic intervention, despite the misleading data provided by the industries of those that are marketing vapes and hookah pipes. They market that as the safe alternatives. What is often not disclosed is that these hookah pipes and the vapes product contain nicotine, which increase vulnerability to nicotine addiction, especially amongst the youth. Therefore, the tobacco bill presents an opportunity to improve health outcomes, prevent tobacco-related illnesses, which cost our country billions. Furthermore, with such legislative intervention, we will be able to continue to contribute to economic growth by addressing these losses incurred due to productivity decline. Investing in prevention now reduces future health expenditure, strengthens public health, and keeps families, communities, and individuals productive and healthy. Furthermore, we must challenge the media and entertainment industry that glamorize drugs and excessive substance use in music videos, social medias, and films. Such action normalize harmful behaviors and encourage the youth to experiment. Influencers and artists have the responsibility to promote healthy lifestyles, not profit from the pain and addiction of our people. We must call on the media and influencers and artists who present the drug substance as cool without referencing the devastating real life effects. To this end, the government and the civil society must forge a stronger partnership with the media, artists, and influencers to promote pro-health and uplifting the content that that represent our shared values. The fight against drug and substance abuse is a fight for democracy and our shared humanity. It is about realizing our constitutional imperative to the right to health, dignity, and life. Discriminatory practices and criminalization undermines these democratic promises and hinder access to help. We must strengthen human rights approaches in our prevention and treatment strategies to ensure effective and equitable outcomes. This also includes addressing barriers and stigmas that threatens access to treatment, including misleading notions about who can have a drug, who can be addicted to drugs. Such bias delays the treatment and worsens suffering, as the addiction it's classless. It knows no race, no color, no gender. Additionally, this requires sensitivity training for healthcare workers to approach addiction with compassion and no judgment. Treatment must be inclusive and integrated to primary health, where screening referrals are offered, including counseling and recovery support. The drug landscape is also rapidly evolving, with new substances constantly being introduced to our communities. As an African National Congress, honorable members, we believe in shared humanity that appreciate true freedom as one that consists of being free from all addiction. I thank you.
Honorable Mahlatsi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Hotso, Africa. The UAT rise today in a spirit of Ubuntu. Mutu ki mutu ka batho. And because we cannot watch in silence while a silent genocide is being carried through the nose and veins of our children. On this International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Traffic, we are not merely fighting drugs, we are fighting an imperialist weapon of mass destruction, a weapon disguising pleasure, targeting African youth to disable their revolutionary potential. Honorable members, our leaders speak of crime, unemployment, broken families, but they fail to connect the dots between the systematic flooding of drugs into our communities and the deliberate weakening of Africans' future. Let us not be naive. When Poto and Mkondowe Sizwe rose, they were driven by a sober and militant youth. Today, the imperialists have changed their weapons. No longer bullets, but bags of nyaup and crystal meth. Not bombs, but addiction to TikTok and Instagram, which colonize the mind more effectively than the chains ever did. What is the strategy for our government? We see no national mobilization on the kind that build a defiance campaign. We see no proper rent recovery center in the townships. No state-funded psychological and spiritual restoration. Instead, we see budget cuts and cosmetic campaigns. Honorable Speaker, Africans must rise united. The war against drug cannot be fought in silos. We need Pan-African anti-narcotic front, one that disrupts the roots, dismantle the networks, and more importantly, re-educate the youth with love, discipline, and consciousness. Let us act in a spirit of Ubuntu. If one child is addicted in Kailicha, we all suffer in Soweto. If one child trafficked in Lepelengumbi, our humanity is diminished in Thabo Mofutsanyana. The time is now. Before it's too late, let us not wake up one day and find our army replaced by addicts. Our classroom turned into a rehab center. Our revolution sold for a hit. Let us break these chains with unity, with purpose, and with the soul of Africa. Katni Mambo.
Thank you. Honorable Abrahams.
House Chair, it doesn't matter whether you live in the city centres or deep rural villages. Substance abuse continues to destroy South African lives. The type and the prevalence of substance may differ from province to province, but its abuse leaves the same trail of violent crime, domestic abuse, school dropout, and mental illness. It tears families apart, locks youth out of opportunities, and ultimately drains the economy. As we commemorate International Day Against Drug Abuse and illicit trafficking, we reflect on our government and society's role. Government has failed to respond adequately to substance abuse. This is evident in the lack of resources in clinics and hospitals, overwhelmed social workers, unregulated rehab centres which pop up as a result of oversubscribed government facilities, and the gross inadequacies in the entire criminal justice system, from arrests to successful prosecutions of drug dealers and syndicates. Every sphere and department of government has perfected the art of lip service when it comes to this issue. Just yesterday, the Portfolio Committee on Social Development was scheduled to have a briefing from the Central Drug Authority on the evaluation report of the National Drug Master Plan 2019 to 2024. Despite this being adopted in the committee's program well in advance, we were informed only on Monday via a letter from the Minister that the CDA is not required to present an evaluation report, despite it being the statutory body that oversees and monitors the plan's implementation. This accountability gap once again highlights the urgent need to amend the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse Act to separate the CDA from DST and give it more teeth and muscle to execute its mandate. The committee also recently received an uninspiring 14-slide presentation from the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, which focused more on what the department is meant to do rather than the National Drug Master Plan. The presentation also confirmed the obvious, that there is, and I quote, inadequate resourcing to enable the effective implementation of the National Drug Master Plan, close quote. This lack of funding and resources render the National Drug Master Plan to just words on paper, despite setting the right goals: reduce supply and demand, increase harm reduction, and prevent new drugs from entering the market. On the topic of new drugs, House Chair, it would be remiss of me to not join colleagues in this debate to caution government on the deadly effects of synthetic opiate drugs such as fentanyl, which is between 30 to 50 times more potent than heroin. People have already tested positive for fentanyl in the provinces of KZN and Eastern Cape, bearing in mind that data gathering can only be done when people present themselves to rehab facilities and programs. There are many, for various reasons such as cost and access, lack of education and support, who do not seek assistance for their addiction, resulting in underreporting of statistics, including increased use of fentanyl. House Chair, fortunately for us all, South Africa is much bigger than just government. Our people know better than to rely on lip service. That is why across the country, civil society organizations and NGOs, despite ongoing funding challenges, are hard at work filling in the gaps which government has neglected over the years. We must also acknowledge the unsung heroes, the volunteers who run support groups, the neighbors who feed hungry children left by addicted parents. Speaker, these are the real champions of prevention, treatment and recovery. Whereas government bureaucracy remains one of the biggest obstacles to prevention, treatment and recovery. I was contacted by a manager of a private rehab in Durban who, despite complying with every norm and standard set by government, has since May 2023 been struggling to obtain a zoning certificate from the municipality, which triggered the Department of Social Development to decline registration. Despite numerous requests and appeals in line with the Act, he could not break through the wall of government bureaucracy. After much back and forth between myself and the minister, I received a message to say they eventually received all the certificates and the registration certificate has been issued. Their doors could finally open. 22 months of government red tape stood in the way of access to treatment and recovery. House Chair, the irony of this issue, substance abuse, is that it often feels hopeless and impossible, when in fact we require a hopeful society to change the status quo. We require a people with dreams and aspirations to choose a life free of substance abuse instead of using it to numb pain and escape reality. We require a society where syndicates cannot prey on our unemployed youth, offering identity, income and status. And we require recovery to be tied to economic empowerment through skills development and employment. Because nothing, House Chair, nothing restores dignity and self-confidence like a job. South Africa, especially young people, want to wake up Monday mornings with purpose, en route to a job, building a future, instead of nursing hangovers and poor choices. And as long as poverty is inherited, hope scarce, and drugs and alcohol easier to get than a job, we as government will continue to fail. And while hope is not a strategy, House Chair, there is no denying the GNU has brought renewed hope. Now it must deliver the economic growth and jobs as a catalyst to address injustices, and this issue of substance abuse, which can often feel hopeless and impossible, will sort itself out as dreams become reality people don't need to escape from. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Muyela.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Members. In its drug awareness fact file, the South African Police Service make a distinction between legal and illegal drugs that exist. Alcohol and caffeine are characterized as the softer social drugs, while tick, ecstasy, man drugs, and cocaine are classified as harder illegal drugs. The common factor between all these categories is that they are addictive to create a social dependency, which is in most times very destructive, not only the drug user but the families and societies in which they exist. I acknowledge the context of health and social implications of drugs use and abuse as set out by the comrades Honorable Ramaila and Honorable Shabangu, who spoke before me on the position of the African National Congress in this debate. Indeed, we must use every opportunity to raise awareness on drug abuse and devastating impact it has in our communities, because as the African National Conference, we have committed ourselves to declaring a war on drugs as one of our driving priorities in this 7th administration. The National Drug Master Plan serves as the blueprint for preventing and reducing substance abuses and its associated social and economic consequences in our South African society. Some of the key outcomes of the National Drug Master Plan places a responsibility on all state organs, whether directly or indirectly, to take steps to prevent the use of drugs. The 2025-2026 budget and revised annual performance plans indicate that the Directorate for Priority Crimes has increased its budget allocation for the thorough and responsive investigative crimes in an effort to reduce organized crimes of drug syndicates, and in this will be done through the Narcotics Intervention Strategy and National Drug Master Plan. The fight against drugs is a difficult one, but one we cannot afford to lose, and that is why we need to improve our oversight mechanism and call for stricter border controls, harsher sentences, and deployment of specialized crime intelligence units to attend to the issue of drugs. The South African Police Service continues its nationwide Chanela operations with intensified operation across all provinces to prevent and combat crime. There are achieved remarkable successes that stems from proactive policing tactics. During the week of 16 to 22 June, the operation identified 235 drug dealers and 2,602 people were arrested for drug possession, mostly in the Western Cape. Though many areas and significant drug seizures by authorities at international airports and other ports of interest indicate that this is a lucrative market in South Africa. From international drug syndicates, it is quite evident that the intelligence is on the ground and police officers are hard at work in clamping down the flow of drugs, whether it is from within the country or outside the border. We've seen a commitment to dislodge drug networks, even as going as far as establishing working relations with international law enforcement authorities in the cases of international cross-border smuggling. We further encourage the police to conduct routine checks, searches, and seizures, because from the time to time we hear of fatal road accidents because someone was heavily intoxicated by drugs or other substances. We remain very clear in our call to declare any form of intoxication on public roads a criminal offense. In this breath, we intensify our campaign and a call upon on their liquor boards, municipalities, and community members to work closely within the police by ensuring that licenses are adhered to. The honest reality is that we are confronted by a very evil reality that banks on the vulnerabilities of the youth. Our correctional centers are filled with youth who have found themselves in conflict with the law. On closer observation, we have come to the sad realization that the youth is being used by drug lords because of their economic vulnerabilities to transport and sell drugs. The underlying logic is that the cause will be a learner handing down sentences to young people because of the need to rehabilitate and reintegrate them back into the society. This makes the youth soft targets for these criminals. As we map out strategies to prevent drug use and abuse, we need to equally engage on the need to engage youth in productive labor. We remain concerned with the presence of organized crime networks operating within prisons and the continued influx of drugs and other contrabands in correctional facilities, which are the times facilitated by correctional officials. We need to stand firm that this is not a normal state of affairs and must continuously push for better correctional services that offer effective rehabilitation and reintegration of inmates back into the society. As the ANC, honorable members, we are equally concerned with the high vacancy rate of field posts in correctional facilities, more especially when we are confronted with such serious challenges of drugs and substance abuse. At present, correctional facilities in South Africa have more than 1:24 ratio, meaning that one social worker, psychologist is responsible servicing 240 inmates. This arrangement, without a doubt, is a set out to produce substandard results without the appropriate treatment plan, while in incarceration, offenders will most likely relapse to use drugs after release and will most likely recidivate or reoffend, be incarcerated for the same or related offense. We need the Minister of Correctional Services to take very seriously the need to have a competent and a committed staff and adequate resources and programs that are specifically and specially designed for rehabilitative purposes, because the justification for treating prisoners and parolees rests primarily on the fact that there is a high correlation between drug abuse and crime. As I conclude, these increasing efforts to identify and neutralize gangs and criminal groups involved in drug-related crimes is essential for restoring safety and order in our communities. It enhances intelligence, dedicated task forces, and collaborative operations with other law enforcement agencies will strengthen the South African Police Service's ability to combat organized crime effectively. We must work with the police, government agencies, community organizations, and healthcare providers to create a comprehensive and cohesive approach to addressing drug addiction in South Africa. Indeed, honorable members, as I conclude, I agree with what Honorable Mackenzie said here, that we indeed need more induction in this House, Chair. Because today, others here will be accounting for sleeping on duty, for not calling a division Ko Obaba to Duzani. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. I request members to stand and wait for the presiding officer and the maids to leave the chamber, and that concludes the business of